Earth Day has just gone by, so I want to talk about some Earth Day related books that you should be reading. One of them will surprise you. So, Earth Day, the world, nature, environment, very important. Before we start, I want to say, everything that's gone wrong in the world right now, everything that's going bad in the world right now, is going to intensify significantly as the climate crisis gets worse. And I know some people are like, well, I can't think about the climate right now. I am telling you, as the climate crisis gets worse and worse and worse, everything is going to get significantly worse. From fascism to racism to costs to lack of jobs, all of it is going to be intensified. So please, if you take anything away from this video, try and get involved in doing something related to the climate, whether it be stuff individually. I know it doesn't feel like it makes a difference, but it does eventually if it's done en masse. Getting involved politically, getting involved in your local area, at the very least, I promise you, you want to be involved in climate action. I swear you do. And I guess to start, let's talk about getting involved in climate action. We can talk about Andreas Malm's How to Blow Up a Pipeline. Now, it's not me or Malm telling you to go off and blow up a pipeline right now. I wash my hands of anything you do in relation to that. But Andreas Malm's How to Blow Up a Pipeline, I guess it's tangentially related to environmentalism. Malm is very much an environmentalist. Environmentalism is a key aspect of this book. There's also a movie they made of the same name. I've not watched it. Maybe there could be a movie club movie one month, but I've not watched it yet, so I can't really talk to you about the movie. But How to Blow Up a Pipeline, the book. The book is basically Malm making a pitch, trying to explain why groups go through violent, well, quote unquote, violent actions when trying to achieve things, in an example of being which is blowing up pipelines or, other such things. Malm's thesis, and he brings evidence for this, is that for things to work, for us to be in a progressive state, there needs to be groups or people who are willing to do direct action, and direct action that the state, the superstructure, whatever you want to call it, would refer to as being violent. So, examples he gives are the Spear of the Nation in South Africa, where the Spear of the Nation were the military wing of the ANC, and many people believe that the military wing made it possible for the South Africans, well, the apartheid South Africans, to negotiate with the more moderate parts of the ANC to try and stop the military wing running, the shots. That's one example for it. Another one is, and I guess I would bring in Kwame Ture in this, where Kwame Ture says, and I'm just going to play the clip.
In order for nonviolence to work, your opponent must have a conscience. The United States has none.
Ture says you can't peacefully negotiate with people who do not have a conscience, or people who do not view you as equals, and actually at points having to use some form of violence. I say violence like this because I don't really feel like it's violence, against the state, against state apparatus, against corporations, against the superstructure, is a necessity to try and show them that actually you are willing to fight back against them. Another key example, and I can't pronounce the name, so I'm going to put the word here, was in Germany, where a bunch of young people basically ran onto the where there was going to be a coal field being built, and they managed to stop the building of the coal field for at least a while in Germany, and it became a big thing, and it brought people into actually talking about and actually discussing the environment. That is something that the state would consider to be violence. Destruction of property, the state says it's violence. Is property, especially private property, something that has rights? Well, in some countries it actually does. Should it? It really shouldn't. And look, Malm isn't necessarily saying, you need to replicate what the Spear of the Nation were doing in South Africa as a form of violence. But he does, talk about direct actions that can be taken. We can talk about the pipeline. I think Lakota pipeline, and how people were violently brutalized by the state, by the superstructure. We'll use superstructure because it's not just the state, it's the corporations as well, it's the bourgeois class. The superstructure, because they wanted to build a pipeline to spread oil, because the fossil fuel giants, fossil capital, as Malm refers to it and many other people refer to it as, wanted to be able to monetize the oil, which clearly we know now is a commodity that is so volatile and actually maybe we should be moving away from. Who'd have thought? And, Malm doesn't just talk about that. He also talks about people who try to misuse violence. An example is eco-fascists, and this in particular opened my mind. Whenever someone says something like, humans are the real parasites of the earth, humans are the reason the earth is dying, we need to have less humans, that is eco-fascism. That is basically advocating for mass killing of human beings for the environment to flourish. The problem is, that doesn't make sense because we know that there is more than enough resources on the earth to not just, serve everyone who is currently alive. That's about 8 billion people, but a significantly higher amount of people. It is because of capitalism and overconsumption, particularly from those of us in the West. Look, I'm guilty of this, you're probably guilty of this, and we have to unlearn these things because capitalism has told us we should overconsume. But because of overconsumption, overproduction, it has led to us burning through our resources significantly faster than either one, we have them, or two, for them to regrow, rebuild, come back to be sustainable. And so we shouldn't fall into the trap of eco-fascism either, because not only is that harmful, frankly, it's pretty racist too, if you think about how, you look at eco-fascists or just fascists in general, talking about how, there's too many people being born, and they'll often point at the global south where birth rates are much higher, and that's because, it's a whole other kettle of fish where birth rates are linked to economic income. Kids need to go to work to help sustain their families, so you have more kids, or you have more kids, you have more chance of your child being successful and lifting you out of poverty. Again, it all comes back to capitalism as well. And so, do not be an eco-fascist either, but also perhaps there is a role for there to be direct action or violence against the superstructure to help us achieve our environmental goals. Next, I'm talking about a book that I did release a short for Earth Day, and it's Environmental Warfare in Gaza. I have spoken about this book multiple times, but I feel like it's one that I need to keep pushing. I want people to read this, and also, it is a very scientific heavy book, but me being a no science boy, I got it. I understood it on the first read. I'm sure there's more stuff I can probably pick up when I do my second read of this book, but I promise you, even though it feels daunting, it's not. I'm sure you can get through this. If I can, most people can. Environmental warfare in Gaza, I guess, it's pretty self-explanatory. It is basically how the so-called State of Israel has used the environment as a weapon against the people of Gaza and has destroyed the environment and used it as a weapon against the people of Gaza. Just like in my short, I want to talk about one particular thing that stood out to me was Israel doesn't allow people in Gaza to grow crops that are basically above knee height. And this is important because a lot of the arable land in Gaza is on the border of what is so-called Israel. So it's very easy for Israel to ensure this policy is in place. Why do they have this policy? Well, this policy is so the crops do not hinder Israel's regular incursions into Gaza. So the crops do not hinder Israeli occupation force soldiers or their tanks from entering Gaza, where they will regularly go in and murder Palestinians. This is a policy that made it so the historically flourishing orange trade industry in Palestine, which included Gaza, which included places like Jaffa. The orange trade industry was killed in Gaza because the trees were blocking the Israeli occupation force tanks getting into Gaza. And also, this led to Gazans, deciding, okay, let's grow strawberries. And strawberries became a big export for Gaza. Gaza became synonymous with making growing these beautiful strawberries, and because they weren't going above knee height. And guess what? The Israelis have gone in, they've torn up the land, they have destroyed much of the arable land that was left. That land in itself probably is no longer arable, or for it to become so again will take generations perhaps. This doesn't even include the absolute destruction of the actual land in Gaza. So we can take a step back and talk about this. So when rubble hits the ground, that is not the end of what it does. So when we build buildings, there's concrete, there's insulation, there's steel, rebar and stuff. And I don't know if nutrients is the correct word, but those things get into the ground through dust and whatnot. But also, they just float around. These things, we know, increase the causes of things like cancer. There was a study done on first responders in 9/11, and we found that those who were breathing in a lot of the air from the collapsed buildings had a higher risk of actually having cancer later on in life. That is going to be what's impacting Palestinians. So even the people who are going in and pulling out the rubble, trying to save people going back to their homes when they can, going through the rubble looking for things, or even in the future when, inshallah, we eventually rebuild Gaza, those who are doing it will be, these things will possibly affect them. And even with that, the land in itself has all of these, again, I don't know if nutrients is the right word, but has all these things that have gone into it, making the land, less likely to be able to used for growing any sort of crops, any sort of plants, trees, even the beautification, even the nature in itself will not be available to Palestinians in Gaza. And, even building on this, we saw recently that Israel and the United States blew up an oil refinery in Iran. This caused black, acidic, oil-dropping clouds to be spread across Tehran. Those clouds also went further into Iran, across West Asia and also Central Asia. And that in itself is something that's going to cause cancer, that is going to shorten lives, and that is environmental warfare. They have altered the environment. They've used the environment as a weapon against these people, and they are going to die from it. And so our environment is so important. The destruction of Palestine, the destruction of Gaza, the oil clouds over Iran, all of this is important. All of this is connected to our climate. Our climate is a very delicate thing that we need to care for, because, destroying nature can lead to these horrible things happening to people, not just in the short term, but the long term, and can be used, as an economic weapon as well. Okay, and our last book is going to be very much a change of pace. It is The Lost Words by Robert Macfarlane. This is nature poetry, very British, very English, very beautiful. I not only read it, but I also listened to it, and the listening performance was really great as well. So this book is basically a poetry book, which is kind of taking the sort of words that we used growing up to describe the outdoors, the fun we had, the things we saw. I don't know about you guys, I remember me and my friends just kind of being let loose in, I wouldn't call it a forest, but the woods, and to just like muck about. We were building forts, we were pretending to be Lord of the Rings characters, using sticks as weapons, all of these things. We were enjoying nature as we could, and that has been taken away from young people. And I'm sure even my generation, we had less access to nature than generations before us too. Whether it be because parents are severely overworked, having to work 1, 2, 3 jobs, both parents having to work. Whether it be, a lack of access to nature, natural places being painted over with concrete buildings, or getting to access the nature requires you to have to take precarious routes over several roads to get there. And when you get there, because there's such little nature, it's packed, it's difficult for you to kind of have a lot of space around you when you're there. Or if it's simply a thing where, kids aren't, there's this feeling that typically the right have made it seem like, okay, there's no safety out there. It's not safe to take your kids out. And that is probably because, again, due to capitalism as well. And even, there's no youth groups where you will have, even if your parents are working 2 jobs, you have someone who can take you out and, go in nature, you'll be with other kids, because it's been cut, again, because of capitalism and austerity. And so these sort of things, this access to nature is being lost to kids, and the lost words is basically poems and a little verse that uses these kind of words that we used growing up, trying to describe nature, really trying to encourage kids to find the outdoors fun and cool and interesting. And I think it's really beautiful. I think it's something that we need more now, even as adults. I feel like because of the crushing weight of capitalism, we don't get to enjoy the outdoors very much. And even when we do, it's like, oh man, I've got to get back to work, or oh man, what am I going to do? How do I get to places? What am I up to? I can't afford to be here. Even going out with your mates for a bev in the park. Can you really do that anymore? Can you afford to do that anymore? Why aren't you at your desk working and slogging away? It's not just the kids who need nature and the outdoors to reconnect with it. It's also the adults. And I think this book, as an adult, I really found it beautiful. It really encouraged me to get outdoors more, even if it meant taking a walk, diverting my walk to the gym to go through the park to get there. So I got some nature, I mean, look, I walk to the gym. It's like a 25-minute walk. Unless I deliberately go through the park, I'm just walking through a concrete jungle to get there, and it's kind of depressing, I'm not gonna lie. So I think this book is going to be lovely for people of all ages. Once my younger family members get to the age where they're more confident reading, because I wouldn't say it's for very young children, I'd say maybe 6, 7, oh my god, years old, that would probably be an appropriate age for this book. Once they hit that age, I want to get them this book and get them to kind of connect with the outdoors a little bit more. I mean, I'm hoping parents are able to do that as well, or have your family unit to help you do that. I think it's really important. If you're an adult, pick it up. I got mine I read it at the library, so your library will probably have this book. It's really lovely, it's really great, and it makes you appreciate nature more, which again is linked to climate and the environment, because as the climate crisis gets worse, and it inevitably will be unless we do something about it, we won't have access to that nature. Desertification will happen here, even in the UK. Eventually, they will plaster over our homes with ugly shopping centres, with ugly buildings that we don't need, with data centres that we don't need. So this book can help you reconnect with nature. It can make you touch grass, is what I'm saying. So those are some books that you should read in regards to Earth Day, Earth Week, Earth Month, the Earth. If you're new here, I hope much of the kind of proto-Marxist analysis that I kind of gave didn't scare you off. That was a first where I went really heavy with all 3 books. I think it was first. I don't know. Maybe it wasn't. But let me know any books that you think people should read in regards to the environment down below, whether it be fiction, non-fiction. There's plenty of books I probably could have spoken about. I could have spoken about Annihilate. I think that's a pretty environmentalist book, but it's been like a decade since I read that. So let me know any books people should check out in the comments down below. Before we move on, I want to say a special thank you to my members. Members get access to bonus videos, bonus content, movie club, book club. They're going to get access to monthly essays from me. So you can check that all out by hitting join down below or on the channel. Also, as you got into this part of the video, what do you think of this? Is this annoying you? Is this reflection? I've rejigged stuff a little bit for those of you who are regular members, watchers. Is that annoying? I can try and fix that somehow. Let me know in the comments down below, and I'll know you've reached this point in the video. So again, thank you for watching. Like, subscribe, share the video with a friend or family member, and hey, I hope you read a great book today. And go outside. Not right now, because it's midnight and it's very dark and I don't live super close to the park. But go outside.